the differences between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Bible explained. The evolution of Scripture, unearthing the secrets of the Dead Sea Scrolls. For millennia, the history of the Hebrew Bible seemed solid, anchored by the traditional Masoretic Text, the meticulously copied Hebrew text that forms the bedrock of modern Jewish and Christian Bibles. But in 1947, a stunning discovery in the limestone caves of Qumran, near the Dead Sea, shattered this illusion of a uniform, unchanging text. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls unearthed roughly 15,000 manuscripts and fragments, representing over 600 different works. Far from being identical to the traditional texts we use today, these ancient scrolls revealed hundreds of significant textual variations, proving that 2,000 years ago, the Bible was far more fluid and diverse than anyone had ever dreamed. To understand why the texts differ so wildly, one must first look at the unique community that guarded them. While ancient Roman historians like Josephus framed the caretakers of the scrolls as quiet, pacifistic philosophers called Essenes, their own writings tell a radically different story. According to their own sectarian manuscripts, they viewed themselves as a radical, apocalyptic, messianic, New Covenant group. Driven by intense eschatological fervor, they fled into the Judean desert to live communally, practice ritual baptism, and quite literally, prepare the way of the Lord in the wilderness, as prophesied in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 3. The Qumran library itself can be divided into three distinct textual categories. Sectarian scrolls, making up about 30% of the entire library collection. These manuscripts contain the unique writings of the Qumran community itself, detailing their foundational charter, sacred hymns, and apocalyptic prophecies. Outside texts, another 30% of the collection, consists of ancient apocryphal and pseudepigraphal literature that the community did not author but highly valued, such as the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch. Biblical texts. The remaining 40% of the library is comprised of direct copies of books from the Hebrew Bible, providing the earliest known manuscripts of these sacred scriptures. Surrounded by a vast collection of outside literature, including the apocalyptic Book of Enoch and the solar calendar-focused Book of Jubilees. This community was not merely reading scripture, they were actively living out a fluid, expanding theological movement. When biblical scholars compiled the Dead Sea Scrolls Bible, translating the ancient Qumran biblical fragments into English, they realized these scrolls were over 1,000 years older than any previously known Hebrew manuscripts. Crucially, many of these scrolls did not agree with the traditional Masoretic Text. Instead, they frequently matched the Greek Septuagint translation or the Samaritan Pentateuch, showing that alternate, equally authentic versions of the Hebrew scriptures existed simultaneously. Several major textual variants stand out, exposing deep theological shifts and historical cover-ups. Polytheism and the sons of God in Deuteronomy, chapter 32, verse 8. One of the most profound differences appears in Deuteronomy. The traditional Masoretic text reads that God divided the nations according to the number of the children of Israel. However, the Dead Sea Scrolls version reads that the nations were divided according to the number of the sons of God, or Bnei Elohim. This original, polytheistic reading, which implies that different nations were assigned to different lesser deities under a high god, was deliberately altered by later scribes to fit a strict, monotheistic theology. The missing Sabbath command. In certain biblical scroll fragments, explicit laws regarding the strict preparation of meals before the Sabbath reveal a highly restrictive, alternate interpretation of Sabbath law compared to the later mainstream Masoretic tradition. These variants showcase the localized, rigid legal frameworks, or halakha, being developed by distinct Jewish factions during the Second Temple period. The multi-Messiah tradition in Zechariah 6, modern mainstream theology, recognizes a singular Messiah figure. Yet the Dead Sea Scrolls reveal a complex landscape where the community anticipated multiple distinct messianic figures, a royal, Davidic Messiah, and a priestly Aaronite Messiah. Later textual redactions trimmed these pluralities down, effectively erasing the complex, dual messianic theological structures that heavily influenced sectarian movements. For decades, biblical textbooks confidently stated that the collection at Qumran contained copies of every single book of the Hebrew Bible except for one, the Book of Esther. Because Esther never explicitly mentions the name of God and details a highly nationalistic feast called Purim, celebrated in Persia, historians assumed the austere, desert-dwelling Qumran community rejected the text entirely. That historical consensus was turned on its head when advanced multispectral imaging allowed researchers to finally analyze a heavily degraded, unidentifiable scroll fragment. The fragment was revealed to be a copy of the Book of Esther. Why had it gone unrecognized for so long? In a twist of historical irony, the scroll had been deeply stained by spilled wine centuries ago. Given that the Feast of Purim traditionally calls for celebratory drinking, scholars and lay people alike have noted the fitting nature of the find. The Essenes may have gotten into the spirit of the holiday far more than anyone ever suspected. The realization that the Dead Sea Scrolls preserve a completely different Bible removes the modern concept of Scripture as a monolithic, fixed document. Instead, it reveals a vibrant, living library. Religion in the 1st century BCE was complex, shifting, and deeply experimental. By offering a direct window into an era where multiple versions of the Hebrew text coexisted, the Dead Sea Scrolls prove that the evolution of religious thought was not a straight, unyielding line, but a rich tapestry of competing ideas, alternative calendars, and shifting traditions.